You may have heard of a lean manufacturing tool called 5S+1. It's gained a lot of popularity over the years, and it actually started back in 16th century shipbuilding. It is a tool that can be used in any industry, and it has a lot to offer. Hi, Brian McCordy here from Black Belt Lean Thinking, and I wanted to do a very short tutorial on how to implement 5S+1. As I said, it is a tool in the Lean Manufacturing Toolkit, and it's a foundation tool. It's one that really needs to be implemented before you can really implement more of Lean Manufacturing tools. The purpose of 5S+1 is to surface problems, and that's why it's so important. The more clutter you have, the more disarray and disorganization in any environment, it's going to be hard to surface waste and drive improvement. Well, 5S+1 helps to take care of that issue for you. It just stands for 5 words: shine, sort, set, standardize, sustain, and that +1 is safety, which you should do all through it. It is a formula that you can really walk through in any environment to drive some amazing improvements. And one of the things I love about 5S and a lot of the lean tools is its simplicity. It is a very simple tool to embrace that give you a lot of bang for your buck. I love 10X's. 10X means 1X, one shot, one bird, 1X. 10X is shooting one shot, getting 10 birds. That's powerful. That's what 5S+1 does. It gives you a lot of good for the really small amount of time that you're going to invest into it. So with that, let's go to my desktop. I created a short PowerPoint tutorial that you can show your teams to really get you off and running with your 5S initiative.
All right, we will look at why do 5S+1, the 2 sides of 5S+1, how to deploy it and make it stick, and we'll give you some tips. If you can't do 5S+1, you can't do lean. And as I go through the presentation, I think you'll see how important it is to really setting a good foundation on which you can build a good production system and good environments to build continuous improvement and flush out problems and the different forms of waste. What is lean manufacturing? Okay, the reason I have this slide in there is if you want to get the most out of 5S+1, you really need to use it from a lean perspective. Lean manufacturing is a method of improving any operation by focusing on people and processes to eliminate waste, solve problems, and drive continuous improvement. Again, lean manufacturing is a methodology that focuses on people and processes, with the core elements being really identifying waste and driving continuous improvement. Both are very important. Waste just kind of find its way into any system unless you are actively looking for and removing waste. And if we're not moving forward, by default we are moving backwards. Everything has a shelf life. Good things happen by purpose, bad happen by neglect. If you're not driving improvement, you're sliding backwards and you're missing opportunities. Really put simply, if 5S+1 is done right, there's a lot of benefit for it. Most people I know who have been part of good 5S+1 initiatives never want to go back to how things were before. If you're not doing it though right, where people are seeing the benefit, then it is truly just annoying people. Again, the purpose of 5S+1 is to surface problems. We don't want to have to look for problems. We want them waving their hands at us. We're teaching our environment to talk. So we're out to surface problems and eliminate waste. And often 5S+1 is the first activity that you do together to drive your lean initiative. Not always, but very often that's the case. I would suggest using a team atmosphere, using self-directed work teams. I've created some videos along that line also that you can look at. If you want an idea of what makes a self-directed work team, just look at any sport. If you look at a basketball team, again, there are coaches and trainers and all these people supporting, but the players out on the court are free to follow the leading indicators, take their shots, make their passes, and do what they have to do without being micromanaged. That's how self-directed work teams work. We give them the goals, the parameters to work in, and then we support them. Really, all anyone needs from management are just three things: the goal, the resources to hit the goal, and then celebrating success. 5S+1 is a cornerstone for safety. Safety is a very important element through all of lean manufacturing, but 5S really lends itself as a very powerful tool towards safety. When things run well, people don't get hurt. It's very important when people show up for work that they have three things just off the get-go working to their benefit. And we are always working to make sure that these are in place. When a person shows up for work, they deserve a workplace that is clean and safe, one that has all the tools, that's fully stocked with the supplies, information, all they need to do their job. They shouldn't have to go looking for things. And then a process that's under control. They shouldn't have to come into work and start doing dragon slaying and firefighting. If these three things are in place when people show up to work, then they're controlling the environment, the processes. It's not controlling them. Again, we want them focusing on customer satisfaction and driving improvement, really truly adding value. If these three things are not in place, they could spend all day just trying to get them in place. And if you spend 8 hours just slaying dragons and trying to gain control, basically it's an 8-hour butt kicking, and it can really lead to low morale and just no fun. I've seen people leave jobs because they go to work every day knowing that they're in for a firefight all day long because these three things are not in place. There are two sides to the 5S coin. One side is you're out to remove clutter. Clutter hides problems. So it's like if I had a whiteboard that had stuff all over it, all types of writing and equations on it, and I wrote an important message to you on it, you would never notice it because of all that stuff on there. Clutter hides problems. What we want to do is clean that whiteboard, clean benches, clean tables, clean the environment. Once we do that, then we can set up visual devices. Visual devices are a way of teaching our environment to communicate. We want to teach it to talk for us so that it drives behavior, the behaviors we want. So people know what's going on. They can walk into an environment and know immediately what's happening there. And we're used to visual devices. So again, we want to clean that whiteboard, and then we want to write messages on there that are useful for people. So here's a good example of both those: lack of clutter, and visual devices. Almost everyone at home in a kitchen has a flatware drawer, and is a perfect example of no clutter and great organization, a strong visual device. If a fork ends up in the spoon section, you see it immediately. If something is gone, you can usually tell it immediately. It is very organized, gives you visual cues. You open it, you just intuitively know what's going on there. So again, no clutter, so one side of the coin, and then visual devices, letting you know how things should be laid out and how you can find things. Another one I'd point out is if you've ever used NyQuil. NyQuil and DayQuil are totally different colors. Again, visual devices there. You don't want people mixing up their daytime and nighttime cold medicine. For someone to take the nighttime stuff and go to work would not be a good thing, or to try and get a good night's sleep after taking DayQuil. That nighttime cold syrup has kind of a dark look to it, and the daytime looks like it's partially made out of a glow stick. Not quite sure how they get it that color, but hey, the visual cues are very helpful. We're used to it on the road. Again, when you're driving down a busy interstate, we don't want people looking for signs, looking and searching the sides for restaurants and hospitals and gas stations. We want that information really coming out and catching their attention. Again, if you have to look for a visual device, then it's not a very good device. It should be grabbing your attention. If people are looking for it, then you're creating motion, which is one of the ways. Again, we want our environments really talking for us. So these are all examples of visual devices. Again, that first side of that coin is removing the clutter, getting everything clean and organized, and then setting up visual devices to where what needs to happen happens by visual devices every day consistently. Okay, here's some good examples of both. Where you look up where there's no information, uh, again, that could change day to day. But by putting in the visual devices, they know what those bins are for, where they're supposed to be placed, and what's supposed to go in them. Now you're going to have consistency. It'll stay that way day in and day out. The information is right there, and now our environment is communicating for us. Much better, much higher standard. You see the office, and I love it how the desk is too small for everything that's on it. Now it's spread over to the chair. I've actually seen environments that were that way. I have seen desks that were literally that way. Oh, much better environment. Whatever standard you set, people will follow. You just need to set the environment, set the standards. Once again, it's a much better environment to work in, and it's easier actually to maintain. Once you have 5S in place, it's easier to maintain that office that you're looking at in the lower corner than that one on the top. Again, once you get things in place, it's very easy to maintain it. Here's an example that I took from a large factory that I had worked in, where we had a team that was in several areas of the factory, and they were always losing tools. And like I mentioned, they had several different sections that they occupied. So one of their team members came up with the idea of setting up pegboards to hang their tools on, putting colored tape around the pegboard, and then same corresponding tape on the tools themselves. So now you knew if you saw a hammer with a red piece of tape on the handle, it went on the board with a red trim. And when they did that, all of a sudden, all their tools would find their way back at the end of the shifts to the appropriate area, and they were no longer losing tools. This was the first true win from a lean and project perspective that this team had. And after doing it and seeing how much better it made their lives, they really started doing other projects that were just amazing. The pride and the level of motivation with the team just really took off. They did some really amazing things. They actually set up a desk that they use as an information center. They turned it into basically what looked like a nice resort or motel desk. They figured if it was going to be where they were going to be spending their time, they may as well have a little fun. Put some video screens behind it and set the desk up where it looked like you're checking into a nice resort. It was pretty amazing. Okay, with 5S+1, again, we're trying to surface waste. It's good if people have at least a basic understanding of lean. Some of the things that I would really encourage you to have people memorize are the 8 forms of waste that are right here, the 5 S's for 5S+1. 5S+1 with that structure gives you a formula to follow to, again, clean up your environment and make it one that communicates for you. But by memorizing these forms of waste, since 5S+1 creates an environment that surfaces problems, we want to recognize, excess weighting or motion or over processing or any of these when they pop their heads out at us. But if we don't have these memorized, if we're not familiar with them, we might not even recognize them when they show themselves. So again, a good thing for people to understand. And then the alligator there, again, it's not the ones under the water. We have to worry about the ones under the water more than the ones out that have their heads up that we can see. Unsafe conditions are hid by clutter, and we want to be able to see unsafe conditions quickly. So again, a nice clean 5S environment goes a long way to help with that. Okay, so here's those 5 S's. They stand for sort, shine, set, standardize, sustain, and then that +1 is for safety. I've been part of hundreds of 5S projects where we've gone into different environments and implemented this. And so I'll walk you through each step and how to do it. And at each phase, I suggest that you implement safety. Keep safety in your mindset and kind of forefront in your mind as you're doing every aspect. So it's not like something that at the end now we think about safety. You think about safety as you're doing each step. Okay, step one, sort through, sort out. If we were going to one of your work areas, a department, or say even a kitchen in a restaurant, production line in a factory, a part shop, wherever, first thing we're going to do is we're going to basically do some sorting. One of the popular ways that I've done this in areas is just get yourself 3 different color stickers. They can be just 3 different dots, one green, one yellow, and one red. Put green dots on everything that you use regularly that needs to stay there, yellow dots on things you're not sure about, and red dots on things that need to go. Doesn't mean you're throwing those things out, but you're going to get them out of your value field. Your value field is where you do the work. It's where the work actually happens. So again, for that restaurant, for the cooks, it's the stuff they do at their prep stations, right there where they're preparing the food and cooking and all that. In a factory, it might be a work cell or right on the production line. In your value field where you're actually doing the work, you just want the tools and the supplies and the things you need for the work that day. So if you don't use it daily or weekly, I would get it out of your value field. Like I said, don't throw it away. Put it in a cabinet or somewhere where you can get it within 5 minutes. You don't want people wasting time looking for these things, but in the value field, you want the stuff that they're going to use on a regular basis. A good example would be, again, how a desk is set up. The person using the desk has their computer there in front of them, has a phone sitting on it, maybe a file index, but the stuff they're going to need to use, day in and day out. That's what we want. We want your workstation set up with no clutter, but like a surgical center. Just those things you need that you need right at arm's reach. Again, we are removing clutter and just setting things up so you have what you need to do the job. Begin by deciding what it is and what it is not needed to meet your workplace objectives. What is the processes you follow, the work that you do, and get rid of anything that doesn't belong there, again, that you don't use daily or weekly at least. Often when you look at the things you use, you're going to find that 80-20 rule. You're going to find these few instruments or tools that you use 80% of the time. Keep those where they help improve your workflow. They're there at the point of use, and you might consider putting those others back a little bit further away. Okay, now that we've sorted, again, we've sorted into 3 different piles. We've actually even, now we've sorted by the stickers. We've removed the red tag items. The yellow we've sorted to where they are now green and staying, or red and out. So the next step is we're going to clean everything. Reason being, dirt and grime, grease, all hide items. Again, we're not cleaning because cleanliness is next to godliness. We're cleaning because dirt and clutter hide issues. Remember, the whole purpose of 5S is to surface problems. So we want to surface problems. We want it all nice and clean. And if it starts getting dirty, again, well, that's a problem. We want to be able to see immediately when oil is showing up, or grease, or dirt, or grime, or any type of clutter. When you start putting items onto any surface, the message is, hey, it's okay to put items here. So same with it getting dirt, oily, grimy. We want to get it clean and come up with devices, if we can, to keep it clean. So again, set the standard. But remember, cleaning also is non-value added. For something to be value added, it's got to meet 3 points. It's got to be something that the customer is willing to pay for. It's got to change the form or function of the product in some way, and it's got to be done right the first time. Well, cleaning doesn't fit any of that unless you're being paid to do cleaning. So you're a maid outfit or something like that. So we want to get everything nice and clean, so it's like showroom clean, living room clean, and then we want to find ways to keep it that way with very little effort. Okay, now let's brings us to set location. So we've sorted everything out. We know what we're keeping. We've cleaned and painted and got everything to where it looks like new. So if something starts getting dirty or oil on it, we can see it immediately. Just to give you one more step back on that clean, again, set that standard. If you go into, say, a garage where they're working on NASCAR cars, because of the money and the safety of the driver, those garages are like surgical centers. If there's a spot of oil on the ground, they see it immediately. Where did that come from? What's going on? That's the level we really want. Okay, now when setting locations, we've got those green tag items that we decided we're going to keep. We want to set them in locations as close to the point of use as possible. So again, we're not wasting time with motion. We want to set them right in a place that makes sense. We want smart placement. So begin with recognizing that the location of things really matters. We want to locate them where as close to the function of them is. So put tools where you're going to use those tools. Again, it goes back to that computer on the person's desk, the phone on the desk. You're going to improve your workflow by having things where you use them. Function improves flow. How you have your supplies, your tools, all these things is very important. So put them where it's going to work for you, not against you. Okay, even in cabinets, again, one of the things that I've seen done with cabinets is you set them up again like mini systems, so you have them laid out very well. And I've seen pictures put actually in the cabinet showing the items that go there, great visual device. And one of the things that we did actually at the Philips site, again where I was first working with Lean, is we would open the cabinet doors as you're seeing there, take a picture, laminate that picture, close the doors, and hang that picture on the wall, tape it to the wall or to the outside of the door. Now, without opening the cabinet, you can see what is inside the cabinet. So you walk by, you just look at the pictures, you see which cabinet has what you're looking for, you open the door and grab what you need. You don't have to open the door to look and see what's in there. So having pictures or a list on the outside of the cabinet of the contents, again, great time saver, great visual device. Okay, once we have a location of our devices, then what we want to do is standardize it. Very important. Again, to the degree that you're able, you want the same standards everywhere. Use good color coding. In one of the factories that I helped to implement Lean in, we had color codes where if you saw a yellow line around somewhere, it meant that it was equipment that was staying or as a walkway. A green line meant it was something that was going to be leaving, like trash or supplies that were going out, as outgoing things. If you had a blue border around something, it meant this was for incoming supplies. It was stuff that was going to be used in that area. So you could walk into a department that you didn't know, and just by the borders, you could tell what was coming in, what was going out, and what was staying there. So again, great use of standardization. When you look in your car, your dashboard is a great example of standards. All dashboards are set up pretty much the same way, which is really nice. Otherwise, we'd have to relearn every dashboard for each model car we got into. So you want to standardize and you want to maintain what you came up with as improvements for your 5S. And there's something called automatic recoil. The elements of automatic recoil are borders, home addresses, and ID labels. By putting these in place, you create a foundation to where anything that leaves the work area will find its way back. So the border is just what goes around the item. It claims the real estate on the ground or the shelf. The label is what goes on the item itself. And then a home address, just like the address for your house, is right there letting people know, again, if that item is gone, what does belong there. Now, I've seen this, if there's one thing with 5S that's been horribly abused, it's been the labeling. I have really seen this to a comedy level. I've seen dustpans with stickers on that say dustpan, phones with stickers on that say phone, brooms with stickers on that say broom. Whatever infirmity somebody has where they will not recognize those items, that label is not going to help. Don't do anything that does not drive a behavior. Everything you do in Lean should be to serve a purpose. So with that dustpan, it would make sense to label it with, say, Department S, or goes to production line number 9. That makes sense. Brian's broom, Brian's adding machine. That makes sense. Then it's going to find its way back. But you want to label things in a way that it has meaning. It's going to do something. So, say for the stuff in your office, if you're the only person that uses your office, you don't need to label any of it because you know your stuff. But if you have an environment where lots of people are using the items and moving around a lot, then it's a good idea to use the automatic recoil. Put in the bordering, the labels, and the addresses. Okay, sustainment. Often people will say that's the hardest. I have learned a trick for sustainment. Even at the very beginning of 5S, I suggest you put together a 5S check sheet. Have it to identify items that you already know are issues. Have people follow this check sheet at the end of every day. So just taking 5 minutes at the end of the day, they'll go through maybe 10 items to make sure that, say, workbenches are cleaned off, the brooms are back in place, that an area is swept up, there's no slip trip hazards on the floor. You can decide, but get the check sheet going as soon as possible. I've even seen this done where the information is permanent on a whiteboard. And at the end of the day, they'll just use a dry erase marker and just check off each item to show that it's done. The next morning they come in, they erase the marks, and at the end of the day, they do it all over again. From a safety perspective, it's great to have those check sheets and save them because it verifies a safety inspection. If you include items like ladder inspections and steps and good lighting and no clutter and things like that. But you decide, and I would suggest this as a living document, your 5S check sheet, that you morph day in and day out based on whatever needs you have. If all of a sudden, as people aren't emptying the trash, then add it to your 5S check sheet. I would also suggest maybe having a longer check sheet for, say, the end of every week. Say on every Friday, just looking through, spending maybe 20 minutes or whatever and looking at your 5S. I've been in environments where we had 5S in all the offices, and on the name plaques on cubicles or offices, we had a magnet that was stuck to the nameplate that was either green, yellow, or red, and it reflected their last audit. We had people actually from different areas doing the 5S checks, say every Friday, of people's offices. In one factory I know of that was, I love this aspect they came up with. People from the factory floor would take turns doing the audits of management's offices, and the management team would go out and do the factory floors. And it really helped to create camaraderie between the two. It created much more of that team atmosphere between them, created friendships, and it just really helped to drive 5S and all other lean projects. It was really good. So here we go in a nutshell, and I actually have seen different businesses create cards to give their people, wallet-size cards, that basically just duplicated this. So it had the 5 S's there, the sort, shine, set, standardize, sustain, and safety, and then the 7 forms of waste in the acronym of Tim Wood. So transportation, inventory, motion, waiting, overprocessing, overproduction, defects, and then that 8th waste of underutilized people. Again, we want people to memorize these, get really familiar with them. So this is a great thing to put signage up around. With time, we want it to get very intuitive to where when people are looking at environments, they just naturally think of these 7 forms of waste, and they look at it from a 5S perspective. These are the basics that we need to have in place before we can do any other lean projects. You can't do continuous improvement really until you have this in place, because if you don't have it, you're just going to keep sliding back. You need to be able to drive improvement, sustain that improvement, create standards, and then keep moving forward. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your work environment like? If you were to rate it based on 5S, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you be? Can you identify What can you identify to improve 5S in your work area? Remember, set the standard and then maintain the standard via your check sheets. Okay, when we're talking about tips, here's some tips that'll help with sustainment. Have those different, I would suggest different levels of 5S audits. Have the check sheet done daily at the end of every shift. Have different people at different levels come through and do 5S walks. Look at their check sheet. Typically, for the areas that I've been involved with, say as a supervisor or safety or lean director, I would go and look at their 5S check sheets and just initial them once a month, letting them know that I'm looking at them. So have supervisors, basically different people at different levels at different time frames. Say the lead mechanic looks every day. The supervisor might check once a week. Upper management might look once a month. But you want different layers validating that everything needs to happen to maintain the gains really captured through 5S. Pictures of assigned areas in desired 5S+1 condition, along with photos of team members with ownership, is very, very powerful. I've seen this used before extremely successfully. So take a team area, again, it could be a production line, a cell, or whatever. Take pictures of the people and put them on the wall or even on the equipment or communication board, and pictures of the area in the 5S, good 5S state. And again, every day at the end of the shift, the pictures and the area itself should match. The pictures of the individuals means there's ownership there. Really important. If you've heard of Commissiobuy is a very good audit system. I've actually done a video on Commissiobuy you can look up. But it's a way of just picking different things within Lean and doing inspections. So you might go through and look at, say, standard work for someone. Show me your standard work for the process you're doing. Or you might go and look at their 5S check sheet and their environment, see if they're doing 5S. So set up Commissiobuy cards to help support 5S. Schedule management walks. Again, like I mentioned, where I love the factory where they had people from the floor coming in and doing the office people going out and doing the factory floor. Just have regularly scheduled 5S audits. Auditing is non-value added, but it is very important because we do not do things that don't have value. And if no one's looking, say you're creating a report, and with time you learn that no one looks at that report, you know what? After a while, you're going to quit doing it. Same with 5S. If it's not getting any management attention, then obviously it's not important and people will stop doing it. You have to give it attention. There will be gains, but it's going to take time to really solidify and become the way of working. At some point, actually, you want all your lean terminology pretty much to go away and switch it to your production system. If you're Acme Bearings, this is your Acme Bearing production system, and it includes 5S+1. Now, once all that is in place, again, you need Kaizen, you need continuous improvement. If you're not actively moving forward, you are by default moving backwards. That covers it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn or any of my websites, or put comments here on YouTube. And I love to help with Lean. Again, I've got lots of experience with it. Several years of implementing Lean projects, as well as well over 2,000 hours of teaching classroom Lean. So with that, until next time, hopefully this helped you. Be sure and subscribe and share, and hopefully this will help you with your teams. Until next time, Brian McWhorter, Black Belt Lean Thinking.